Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Thomas.
How should we proceed? It's 2 after. Should I just go ahead and start? Or do you need to do any preliminaries?
Trudy usually waits for a couple of minutes and then she just starts and people just keep arriving during the meditation. That's usually the norm in this group.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I can pause for a moment then. Well, Eva, I guess it's 5 after. We'll just allow people to come on in. It feels so quiet in here. Oh, I see my Phil Will. I am transcending. Good to see you. And good morning, InsightLA. My name's Thomas Davis. I am one of the teachers here with InsightLA. I've been in LA for I'm in my 4th year now. And I'm here to step in for Trudy today. And many of you may know that Trudy had a medical procedure that she had to go through. And she wanted to send her regards and her love and to let you know that she's okay. She completed her procedure yesterday and she'll be just going through her healing restorative process. So her and Jack messaged me yesterday afternoon to let me know that everything went well. And they wanted me to communicate that to you, that everything went well. And Jack actually was mentioning that, he could just see her engine trying to get back involved and everything like that. So her energy is really good. And I think he's got a job on his hands just to kind of keep her, in the healing process. So yeah, this is beautiful. And yeah, we're just really grateful for the continuum and for her leadership and for her support to all of us over all of these years. And yeah, I just wanted to just mention that to you first and foremost. I'm really happy to see each of you. I was with you maybe about a month ago. And since then, we've had quite a few seismic changes in our reality, particularly in our country. And I've been making mention in other places that I've taught that specifically to to all women who are here and who felt the impact of the Roe v. Wade repeal, the decision to repeal that. I want you to know that I, as a man, I felt that impact too. However, I didn't feel it to the magnitude that women did. And I probably will never in this lifetime really understand the full impact of what that means and what it means for you. So I just offer this acknowledgement of the sorrow, the grief, the pain, the frustration you may be carrying even now and bringing to this forum. We will, we will, that's basically my most humble way of saying that, I wasn't clueless to it, but at the same time, I will never really understand the impact of it. And I'm in full support of just standing with all women who are going to be bringing their energy and their voice and their power to bringing about a different reality. So I hope that this lands well. I mean it in with all good intent. And yeah, it's just one of the things that we are being asked to work with in our reality. I wanted to share that today we'll be endeavoring to explore our practice, and in the area of our formal practice, I'm going to be asking you to see if we can circumnavigate the intellect for a little while. And I'm really finding that it's important to be able to find a place of refuge within the body. For one, the body is always in the present moment. And for two, as we develop a sensitivity to the body, we can begin to witness how the body is actually offering restorative energies and how the signs of life that we can become aware of that are continually happening in the body, if we could turn our focus to that and not listen so much to the intellect, we can find ourselves resourcing ourselves and tapping into a deeper stream of our wellness, which is here all the time. So we will endeavor to do that. We're going to explore that. And we'll also be exploring what I have been receiving and curating in terms of a Dharma topic, something called the Four Noble Truths of Jazz. And we will see how that goes a little later. So this will be the first time I've offered this, and there's a whole story about how it came to be. And it came from suffering, like most things do. So having said that, I would love to hear from each of you, but we have too many people here to actually pass the mic around. So I'm just going to invite you to just join me in taking a deep breath on a count of 3. I'll let you get yourself situated. My background is somewhat of a replication of what I've seen recently called the Summer of Rage. So I'm just in solidarity with everyone in this regard. And there's this too. I saw a lot of joy at some of the Summer of Rage things I saw in Washington, D.C. on the news the other day. So let's take a deep breath on the count of 3. And as you take that breath in, when you release it, see if you can just notice how the body responds, how it answers how it feels. So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, and let's inhale deeply. And release. And whatsoever posture you're holding, just see if you can notice what the element of air brings and does to the body, how the body responds to that. And we're inclining towards a place of stillness. Reflecting internally on the feeling tones, the various feeling tones. There may be something pleasant arising. There may be residue of something unpleasant. There may be something that's not quite neither of those. We're inclining towards the body because the body is always in the present moment. And as you begin to settle, I invite you just to notice where energy seems to be most concentrated for you in your body, on your body. And if that is an unpleasant thing, or if it's a pleasant thing, in both cases, energy is not personal. And we can just begin to look around the periphery of that concentration of energy and to look into other parts of the body adjacent to it that may be different. Some of you may begin to detect subtle movement of energy. And just notice the different parts of your body, like your arms or your shoulders, your torso. And just invite some curiosity to seeing what's happening within the jurisdiction of the body. And we'll partake of another portion of the element of air by inhaling deeply on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And inhale. Release. And notice how the body subtly responds. You may notice something that feels like endorphins being released. Or you may feel your body downshifting and settling a little more. Just open to these dynamics. The body is so active. And it's doing things for us, not to us. We're going to begin to descend into the lower quadrants of the body, and I'm just going to invite you to notice what's happening from the soles of the feet up to your kneecaps. And all we're looking for are just subtle signs of life. Bypassing the intellect and being more focused on sensations, impulses, vibrations. The body has a way of responding when we pay attention to it. So from the soles of the feet to the ankles, to the calves and shins, and up to the knees, and back down again. And if you feel this has become too familiar for you, just take a pause at the knees and we'll collect ourselves and move upward in a moment. And as you pause, just become aware of the entirety of the body. The Buddha said that the whole of the Dharma is contained within this fathom-long body. Fathom meaning an average of 6 feet in length. But there is wisdom here that's availing itself to us. And we'll collect ourselves at the knees. And we'll begin to ascend upward to the waistline. And we'll just notice what's happening from the waistline down to the knees. encircling the thighs and the hamstrings, and just observing signs of life, the pleasant, the questionable, and maybe the unpleasant. And allow yourself just to traverse from the knees back up to the waist, maybe one or two more cycles. And then pause at the waist when you feel it's appropriate. And allow yourself to allow the flow of respiration to continue. And maybe making the inquiry of, has my experience changed? Has there been a shift in my energy? Is it as concentrated as it was a few moments ago? Is impermanence true? Am I experiencing that? Collecting ourselves at the waist, where we'll begin a very slow and deliberate and delicate ascent up the spine and vertebra. And just begin to crawl like a spider crawls up the trunk of a tree. Just noticing and being curious for yourselves about the potential signs of life that could show themselves along the structure of the back. Slowly, meticulously making your way all the way up to the top of the shoulders, and then making a descent back down again, cascading like a small waterfall to the small of the back. Being open to the surprise of wholesome states, allowing whatever expression is appropriate to show up on your face as you witness this dynamic body in this present moment. If you're making a final ascent up, I encourage you to go out to the extremities of the shoulder blades on the back and just allow yourself to give that part of your body some attention. And notice if there's a response, a sensory response. A somatic response. And we'll just perch ourselves and rest right here at the top of the shoulders. And for those who are so inclined, I just encourage you just to slowly maybe rotate your head in a way that allows the tendons and muscles in the neck to stretch a little bit. This releases tension and the residual effects of some past experience. And just feel into that. There's no rush. You're just taking care of yourselves. We're not relying upon the intellect now. We're trying on a new shoe, which is strictly body-based, and becoming fluent with the language of your own body. And from the place of the shoulders, we're going to take another deep breath on the count of 3, bringing in a healthy portion of the element of air and noticing how the body responds to it. 1, 2, 3, and inhale. And release. And feeling. 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 Continuing to feel. Collecting ourselves at the shoulders, we're going to move towards the base of the neck. And we're going to begin a small but delicate ascent up around the back of the skull. Again, utilizing the spider visualization to demonstrate the speed and the delicacy of which we will traverse this part of our anatomy. So just begin your crawl very slowly, but just notice what type of energy is happening and awakening. Am I becoming awakened too as I make this ascent slowly over the back of my skull, over the crown, and stopping at the hairline where the forehead begins? And take your time and allow yourself to be surprised. And if you've reached the destination of the forehead, go back and traverse downward, making a descent back to the base of the neck, and begin again. An extension of this observation is for those who are inclined to maybe take the palms of your hands and just place them on your cheeks as you make this observation. And allow your head just to rest in your hands. And this may, for some, awaken a sense of relief. And for some, it may awaken some residues of sorrow or grief. But allow your hands to absorb whatsoever is arising for you. This gesture symbolizes an act of compassion. And demonstrates one of the ways in which we can hold the pressure of living that these times are presenting to us. If you want to allow your hands to release the face, and we'll return to the forehead. And we're going to make a descent down over the frontal of the face, over the forehead and the eyebrows, just cascading slowly down the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose and the nostrils. Pausing at the ears just to allow yourself to become aware of the audible sensations that are in the room. Coming into the jawbone and descending down towards the chin. And we're going to just pause right here at the collarbone, focusing on the esophagus. And at the esophagus, allow yourself to just feel the element of air making its way in. And as the oxygen comes in, it creates an undulation in the upper body area. And if you just allow yourself to patiently witness this vital area of the body, it may awaken again some residues of grief or vulnerability. And it may also awaken some sense of resilience. And just allow yourself to hear the process that's unfolding as the oxygen comes in through this tunnel called the esophagus. And just feel. We're cultivating courage to feel and to be present with ourselves and with life itself. Fortifying our emotional intelligence, as well as our somatic intelligence. And from the esophagus, we're going to just descend down just a little bit into the area that you may identify as the heart center. And if it helps you to connect with that by placing a hand or two, please do so. And allow yourself to really feel the imprint of your fingertips by exerting a little bit of force into this area, making an impression with your fingertips and the heart of your palm. and being open to exploring, what does this gesture mean? Does it feel like I'm supporting myself? Is there some sense of energy that this is creating some sort of radiating pattern around, some way that my body is responding? Almost as if it's saying, I've been waiting for you to do this. And if it's difficult to be present to the intensity of this, just allow yourself to minimize it by just releasing your hand or making your touch softer. And we'll take another deep breath on the count of 3, bringing in a healthy portion of the element of air. 1, 2, 3, and inhale deeply. And release and observe how the body responds again. And in closing, I just want you to make the observation, if the dynamics and your condition and if your experience has actually changed. Is impermanence true? Does mindfulness require my persistent intellect, or can I trust the body? Am I a little more fluent with its language and ways? Without a bell, we will make a very gentle transition from our inward focus to our collective focus. And as you do so, allow yourself to stay connected to your experience. 1, 2, 3, and I just invite you to witness the others on the screen who have traversed the landscape of their own body with you. And I want to say thank you for allowing me to lead you and to offer some guidance. The Buddha said that the whole of the Dharma is contained within that fathom-long body that you have. None of us are ill-equipped. And it also suggests that to be aligned with the Dharma doesn't require that you be highly intellectual. But it means that we must become more intelligent to what is always in the present moment, which is this body. Good morning, Jocelyn. It's good to see you. And good morning to everyone else. I'm waking up a little bit. This practice period has served me well. And I'm a little more nervous now than I was when we started, but those are just signs of life. So we'll take a 5-minute break. And I encourage you to take care of yourselves, hydrate yourselves, dehydrate yourselves. But yeah, we'll come back in 5 minutes and we'll proceed with what else is in store, which I'm curious to find out too. So thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. I trust that, I trust that you're in the right place this morning. I saw some of the comments about the practice, and thank you for sharing. Ooh, these are some pretty intense times. I think if we had a show of hands, we'd probably black our screens out because there's just so much happening on every hand. And I don't think that this is the life that any of us asked for, that this is the life experience that any of us anticipated. And I'll use that as a segue because I had an opportunity to share an article with the Lions Roar to commemorate their Juneteenth edition or the celebration of Juneteenth. And in that article, I was asked to participate to share some perspectives from a being Black perspective, being a Baptist perspective, and being a Buddhist perspective. And I was able to discover, I actually stumbled across an article or an essay that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote back in, I think it was 1964. And he wrote an essay to the Berlin Jazz Festival, which he did not orate directly there, but they shared it with the public. And he said that sometimes life doesn't seem to offer us any order or meaning. He said that this is a reality that sometimes life will not offer us order and meaning. But his acknowledgement was to lift up the jazz community, because what he was able to observe was that the jazz musician creates their own sense of order and meaning by allowing the sounds of the earth to flow through their instrument. So to recap the quotation, Martin Luther King said, "Jazz speaks for life. For when life doesn't seem to offer us any hope, any order or meaning, the jazz musician creates their own sense of order and meaning by allowing their relationship to the earth to flow through their instrument. Eva, did you have that article? Oh, you did? Okay, well, thanks for sharing it. So it is at this point that I would like to begin to share, if not all, maybe at least a majority of what I wanted to share with you about jazz and the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Noble Truths of jazz. This is very new for me because it just crystallized for me on Friday night. And I'll tell you really quick the context for this. And this is going to be a little hard, but I'm always kind of like flowing in the space of jazz and really looking at how it intersects with the Dharma and other spiritual traditions, and basically allows us to find a sense of agency and freedom. And so on Friday afternoon, I received 5 words. And those 5 words were, Dad is in the ambulance. That was a message from my sister. And I immediately began to experience what Shakespeare penned as the 1,000 natural shocks that this flesh is heir to. And the following conversations that I had, it wasn't a critical thing. It was just that he was scheduled to go to the hospital for more examinations, and the ambulance was the transport system. So it wasn't a code red, thank God. However, the visual of that opened me up to a lot of grief. And it was later, as the sun went down and as things got quieter, I was actually able to be present with the feelings and the thoughts about that. Although my dad was okay, I had just never heard in my life those 5 words, Dad is in the ambulance. I've never heard that. And so I began to find my tears. And as I was sitting there, allowing the tears and the grief to be released, simultaneously, I began to get the insights. The dots began to connect about this idea I'm going to share with you. And I literally was sitting there like, no, God, this is not the time for insights. Not now, please. This is not the time, so I'm grieving my dad and I'm getting insights at the same time. And it reminded me of the analogy of the grape and the olive berry cannot release their oil or their wine without being pressed. And in that moment, I felt like I was in a vice. It's just a couple of nights ago. And so I was just dumbfounded. I was like, is this how it's supposed to happen? Is this, none of my Dharma teachers or Dharma studies or meditation practice informed me that this is how this happens at times. And I've had insights before, but just never like that. Never like that. And that was the context for why I'm here. And I felt compelled to share this. So I captured everything that came to mind. And so the Four Noble Truths are the are part of the 4 initial teachings that a meditation practitioner will or a Dharma student will be introduced to when they come into learning. And the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. And this is just the Dharma version, right? So the truth of suffering is the first noble truth. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering. The third noble truth is the possibility of the end of suffering. And the fourth noble truth presents us with the pathway and the instructions to commit to and to have a direct experience with the end of suffering through something that is called the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's where the journey begins, is at the Noble Eightfold Path, where we really begin to apply the principles and learn the principles. So the jazz correlation is similar, because both the Dharma and the ideal and the principles of jazz are both concerned with freedom. And just like the Dharma begins with the truth of suffering, jazz also begins with the truth of suffering, because it emerges, jazz emerges from the truth of suffering. The writer, the Black American writer, Ralph Ellison, said this about the blues, which is a cousin to jazz. And he said that the blues is an autobiographical chronicle of a personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. So there is a metabolizing effect, an invitation for us to learn how to metabolize our suffering into some form of a creative, authentic expression. Jazz doesn't avoid or ignore suffering. It is so acquainted with the experience of suffering. It is creative expression through the genre of jazz is dependent upon suffering to some degree. So they are in a symbiotic relationship. Now, I want to say this before I go further. Jazz is not a style. And to apply or to align with what I'm sharing with you, you don't even have to be a fan of jazz or the blues. But if you are interested and concerned with living from the standpoint of the best version of yourself, if you are concerned with living this life that we have in the most authentic and original way possible, if you are concerned with finding your voice and cultivating the courage to exercise your voice in whatever freedom, in whatever mode of expression of freedom you're aligned with, then you're in the right neighborhood. But it doesn't necessarily preclude that you need to be a jazz fan, or that you need to assume some sort of persona that's cool. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering. And in the Dharma, the cause of suffering is something that's called craving or clinging. Anybody familiar with the experience of craving or clinging? Just throw a hand up or a foot or something like that. So in this particular presentation, I'm making the relationship jazz has to the cause of suffering is a principle wherein I want to present that jazz presents itself as an antidote to the cause of suffering. Again, not a style. Dr. Cornel West said this, that a jazz person is a person who is committed to a life of flexibility and fluidity. Being flexible and being fluid are contrary to being in a place of clinging and craving. The qualities of the cause of suffering are clinging, craving, rigidity, bitterness, stubbornness, and ultimately a sense of calcification. It's like mold growing that becomes hard and brittle when we are not exercising and becoming aware of the sense of the possibility that we can be freer than we are by having our intellect fixated around certain ideals and ways of being that seem to serve us really well initially. But then we become, I would say, for lack of a better word, addicted to having things a certain way in our relationship to things. And then we kind of get those that calcification, the rigidity and the stubbornness and thinking it can't be any other way. So the antidote to the cause of suffering in the Four Noble Truths of Jazz is to be open to exploring ways in which we can begin and to maintain, to remember that the idea of flexibility and fluidity is more ideal than stubbornness, rigidity, and craving and clinging. In the description that Dr. Cornel West offered, he said that a jazz person is committed to a sense of flexibility and fluidity. And there is an additive to that, which is, and they are willing to interrogate their dogma, which arises in each moment. So this brings us to the third noble truth, the possibility of the end of suffering. In the Dharma, the possibility of the end of suffering rings like the gospel does. It's the good news. This experience of dissatisfaction and craving and all of that malaise of really maniacal experience, it has a possibility to end. There's a possibility that it can change just from the Dharma standpoint. But within the Four Noble Truths of Jazz, the possibility of the end of suffering comes with a willingness to investigate. In the Dharma, investigation is a word that's called Dhamma Vichaya. And I wanted to drop it in the chat here just in case you can maybe look this word up a little later yourself. I'll pop it in here. Oh my God, chat. There's a lot of chat happening there. Dhammavicaya, which is mindful investigation. Through this process in the Dharma of mindful investigation, we are examining the cause, the arising of a thing, the continuance, the actual in the moment awareness of a thing, and we're also aware of its cessation. So we're observing things arise, we're observing them kind of sustain for a while, and we're observing them fall away. Suffering has a life cycle. Objects of awareness all have a life cycle. They arise, they hover for a moment or for a lot of moments. It depends on our relationship to them, if we're clinging to them or not. And then ultimately they pass away. And we want to be able to cultivate our practice in a way where we're on point when they arise. It's like, oh, it's coming. Oh, it's here. Oh, it's gone. You get that? So that's what investigation is about. Being attuned to the objects of awareness. So where we're looking at here in the third noble truth of jazz is we're looking at the possibility of the end of suffering through a willingness to apply this investigation and this interrogation to what are known as our dogmas. And these dogmas arise in every moment. Dogma in this context are not things that are coming from the government or from the church or someplace else. These are our own internal rules. Dogmas are represented by our self-limiting beliefs, our intellectual constructs, our self-criticism, our self-doubt, even our dependence upon exterior validation, the need to be liked, the need to be quantified and valued. All of these things are things that can arise depending on the causes and conditions that you're experiencing. But if we're going to maintain a sense of flexibility and fluidity, it is our responsibility to be aware and cognizant of our own dogmas, which arise from every moment. It's not them who's holding us back. It's oftentimes us adhering to our own rules. Speaking of rules, the Dalai Lama in the Tibetan tradition, the title Dalai Lama is defined as an ocean teacher, in that is the level of depth that that person is traversing strictly from a practice standpoint. The depths of their knowledge is like the ocean. And the 14th Dalai Lama, who is the one we all know right now, said in regards to rules that we need to be very familiar with the rules so that we may know how to break them effectively. So applying this to our own dogmas, we need to be able to see how are the rules that we have made, are they still serving the purpose that they had when we initially instituted them? Or are they residues from another past time? Are they helping me to arrive and to find the courage to arrive to my present moment experiences so that I can deliver what I feel led to deliver, so that I can share what I need to share so that I can be where I need to be and be who I need to be. Our dogmas need to be mitigated in order to stay aligned with what is true, and also to be attuned to what is unfolding in each moment. Because freedom from suffering, do you know when that ultimately happens? Freedom from suffering can only happen in the present moment. It doesn't happen tomorrow. It's not a future event. Really, we can only be free in the present moment. So we have to be present and invested in our present moment experience. Our present moment experience contains freedom if we're able to ascertain it as such. Undoing our dogmas and not having a fear of suffering, but understanding it is essential to our freedom of expression. The last one is the Noble Eightfold Path, which honestly, I have not curated enough of the ideas because the Noble Eightfold Path is a whole thing. But I can tell you this, is that within the tradition of jazz, there are ethics of jazz, which are not so different from the ethics of the Dharma. Compassionate response, non-harming, inclusivity. Jazz requires that we become an individual so that we may become communal. And that communal is made up of people who have become an individual. You talk about a fierce and brave community. People who have done the work to find their voice and to find their own dogmas and to be aware of their own traps are what is reflected here in this community. We're communal. And I want to just encourage you to continue to invest in your own sense of flexibility and fluidity so that you may experience freedom. And if you want to, I would encourage you to maybe look at some jazz history or something like that. It served me quite well. It's serving me very well. And I think for the amount of time we have left, I had some other things I wanted to insert, but I think I'll forego that this time and maybe save it for another time. But I want to thank you for your time and attention in this humble offering that is known as the Four Noble Truths of Jazz. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. I'll tell you, I really thought I was kind of off doing this, and this is part of the experience of finding our own authenticity, is that, you know, it's just weird, you know. but my heart is in the place where I really want to, I want to be a positive impact on other people. So I encourage you to see if you can find the article in the chat box. I had more to say about Dr. Martin Luther King there, and there's other authors that I'm humbled to be in company with, Dr. Jan Willis, who's a Buddhist scholar, and Dr. Larry Ward, who's also been a stalwart in the Buddhist tradition and who's also a Buddhist scholar himself. So I was invited to be in their company and sharing. So people, thank you. I would love to open up for anyone to share, whether it's in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself and mute. Eva, you can help me to find out how that can work best.
Candace, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yeah. I was
Oh, you muted yourself.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Hi.
Hey.
I was thinking that when you were talking about dogma and that probably other kinds of music too can apply. Like if, for instance, compassion and love, if you're trying to have compassion for someone else or even yourself, listening to love music, like you could probably easily play a love song that you know really well for someone else, but can you play it for yourself?
There you go.
So that's I don't know, I was thinking about music and how you can probably use lots of music in that way to probably even like change your wiring in your brain and your dogma.
Well, you know, Candace, I have a quick response, and thank you for your reflection. As I matured, and one of the reasons that I began to see jazz as an essential component for me was that I began to notice that there were, you know, people like Bill Evans who could get on a piano solo by himself and play some very deep and moving chords, that I'd be like, I can't take this. I got to get out of this room because this is just too heavy for me. And then I had this realization that he's doing this on purpose. He composed this to be this way. And there's an emotional maturity there that I wanted. I don't play the piano, but I wanted to be able to stay in a room where something like that is going down. Why am I running? So that's kind of like it, just a nutshell, like where this why I became so compelled that I wanted to be able to hold, you know, some of the dark and deep and joyful emotions, just like they were doing on purpose. So I feel like the people in that genre are very emotionally intelligent in many aspects, not perfect human beings, but by any means. But they're willing to look at suffering in a way that I wanted to aspire to. Yes, Michelle. And oh, I don't know who was first, Eva.
Will was first. So go ahead, Will, unmute yourself and please ask the question.
Oh yeah, hey.
Hey, Will.
Great to see you. Incredible play on both jazz and the Four Noble Truths, uplifting both of them to another level. I love you as an artist, practitioner, you know, of principles of Baptist background and Buddhist background. It's just beautiful what you do. What touched me the most was bringing it all together in expression as an individual. And we talk about the body so much, and maybe not so much about how the uniqueness of each individual body can blend into and connect with other bodies on this spiritual level. And I felt that going from the practice to the talk, the teaching. I felt that coming all together, that my rhythms, my wild expressions are actually necessary to the whole. That's just, it's definitely what I need right now. I'm dealing with a gatekeeper that's pushing me to, oh no, it's only fair to have everyone fit the same mold. And, you know, I'm saying, hey, but equity means, you know, this thing you keep saying about diversity, equity, and inclusion, equity means we shape the experience, the needs of the people who are coming to us. And you're hitting me with, it's only fair to do it as according to the mold. And so there's this stoppage, this breaking point, this clash. And I don't know if you have an idea how to go from coping with or dealing with someone who is completely committed to dogma and wanting to, I don't know, incorporate the jazz of individuality in the face of that.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate everything. With the amount of time we have, what I would say is that your heart is already giving you the answer. You already know where you stand with this particular dynamic, but it requires something of us to show ourselves and say, hey, you know what, I can't do this. I'm not in alignment with what you're doing. And it costs us something to reveal ourselves like that and to say, hey, we're not with it. I'm not with it. And there's consequences for our freedom sometimes. But, I'll let you kind of determine that. Maybe we could talk offline or something a little bit more. Thank you, Will. Next person, I see a few hands up.
Hi, I think it's me, and I want to be quick because I want to give other people time. But Thomas, I thank you so much for this. I took a history of jazz many years ago, and it brings to mind Coltrane, how much I loved that he was all over the map, and Billie Holiday was Strange Fruit, and it killed me. But what I loved that you did today was you named stuff. You named it. You didn't deny it. Then you talked about how we could cope with it. I've been having a hard time in some sanghas because all the leaders seem to want to do is talk about joy, which I understand, but there's stuff going on. And I loved that you compared it to jazz and the struggles. And you talked about being in solidarity. And every time I've seen you, you've brought jazz in, and it just touches my soul. I thank you so much for this. I needed this.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'm just offering what I eat. I'm sharing my lunch with you. Yes, Jen, or I think Jen, you were next.
Yeah.
And if anyone needs to log off, please feel free to do that because we're at our time. But if you want to hang out, I can be here for a few moments.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll keep it brief. This was wonderful. And thank you for also facilitating such an interesting discussion as well. I would love to hear more about any insights you might have about how to still come from a place of a firm commitment to a path without becoming dogmatic about it. Because I think I have a really hard time with being really rigid and then saying, oh, I'm being rigid, and then abandoning what I had committed to. And I imagine with jazz musicians, as with anyone who dedicates themselves to any kind of art form, there is a strong commitment to the genre, to their artistry, to the community. So I'd love to hear about commitment and flexibility and how those interplay. Thank you.
You know, I think that the commitment, that the rigidity comes from a place of good intention that has just been untended. You know, it's just kind of went from being a rose to like a weed. You know, so we have to look at how much we love this thing. And sometimes we're just loving it to death. You know, and it's like, okay, you know, this thing has a life of its own. I'm contributing to the life of it, but it is not solely dependent upon me. So, you know, it's again, you know, like releasing, letting go, and reframing, like, how can I be involved in this without ruining myself and it too? So what you have is a love that has become calcified. And that love also says, I don't want anybody else touching it. Don't mess with it, you know? So, you know, being communal, being authentic, and also being communal, doing things for the benefit of the whole while you're maintaining your authenticity to how it can be done. And sometimes you might just need to do something else. You know, you might need to just create your own space to do what you need to do for a little while so you can return to a communal setting. Sometimes you're ahead and people aren't getting it, and that creates friction too. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gabby, I see you.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for covering for Trudy, and I enjoyed. I was in your last class and then today, and I liked I just want to say that I really loved the breathing from the toes all the way to the top of the head. And I'm a visual meditator, so when you were saying like crawling, I imagine it was like a spider crawling up a redwood tree, you know, going from the bottom to the top, and that was very that was really good, and it took me to another place in nature as I was, you know, you go from the tip of the toes to the head, you know, so imagining like a river, and when you go into the water and it's cold, you go little by little till you go all the way from the whole body. And doing the breathing with nature was very healing, mainly because there's been tensions at work because you know, there's some rigidity about policies and turning in things at a certain day and time. So, you know, it creates a lot of tension in the muscles for me. And I had to do some work this weekend to catch up. And I was like, I need to like chill. I need to relax because my work was never late because the policies were different in another organization. They have more flexibility as far as turning in your stuff at the end of the week. But turning in your stuff every day creates a lot of tension in my muscles. And it just feels like unnecessary hardship for a human being, you know? It's like, why are we so hard on that, you know? Why be so hard on ourselves? Who comes up with these rules that are just, you know, too much tension? And so I kind of I don't argue with the policy. I kind of just let it go and just smile, you know, when my supervisor says, "Where are your notes?" And I'm like, "They're coming," but they were never late in another organization. Man, where I was 100% on time, and here is like every day, like it dropped to 66%, and I was like, but you know, I'm just, you know.
Hey, Gabby. Hey, Gabby, I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude and cut you off. But one thing I want to offer to you is when those pressures build up, one of the ways that I practice in returning to myself is I practice gratitude. When I feel like the pressure mounting and my body getting tight, just saying thank you, not to any entity, but just allow my body to hear thank you dilutes the bitter herbs of the pressurized experience. I invite you to just see if that works for you, because it's something that just brings me back to like the present moment. And it's like, yeah, I'm under pressure and I'm still kind of blessed too. I'm blessed under this pressure. You know what I mean? I'm still here. So
actually, I do try that. I always say, I don't know if it works, but I do say thank you that I have a job.
yeah,
That's
well,
what
I'm not talking about it for a thing.
Yeah.
I'm saying to say thank you, to see how your body responds to it.
Thank you.
It's
Okay,
not
I'll
for
try that.
there's no intellect and there's no material things involved in that.
Just thank you. Okay, I'll try that.
Thank you, and see how your body responds to that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll
Try
try
that.
that. That's the tip. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for the practice. Very much needed.
You're welcome. People, I know that we are over our time, and I'm open to taking maybe one or two more comments or questions, and then we'll be off by 12:40 at the latest. And I appreciate your notes. Nikte, good to see you. Thank you, Nikte.
It's not a question, but there are a couple of comments that are in the chat, and I'm not sure if Charles is needing a response.
Is this the one fantastic application of Dharma and Buddhist traditions? Is that the one?
Yes.
Okay. Your presentation matters. Okay. I can't read that because that's like me praising myself. Charles Lee or Charles, thank you. Thank you. I'll copy this and read it later. Oh, you're so fantastic. Yeah, I'm not going to read that in front of all of you. So yeah, people, I have more of a musical presentation I wanted to make, but this is how it actually worked out. So maybe the next time I can offer some other things. And if no one has a comment, an audible comment, we can, just for the sake of time, we can depart. But I really appreciate the generosity of your time and attention today.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Loved
Yes,
it.
that was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Michelle, Stephen,
Thank you.
Jen, Charles, Rosa Maria.
I hope you come back soon.
Yeah, we need more of this. We need more jazz.
Thank you.
We need all
We
that
need more
jazz.
Thomas.
Thank you so much, people. Charles Lee, good to see you. Arthur, Jessica, Cindy, Heather, Gabby, Shari, Candace, Camille. I see you, Camille. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Eva, thank you for moderating.